now it's digital. And now it's digital.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to a Schizo's Guide to the Galaxy podcast. I'm back with Soul, and this is Zen. Hello, Soul.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. And yeah, I'm good, thank you. How about yourself?
All right, thank you.
Jolly good. We went on a bit of a ramble last time on episode 1, Ramble Down a Rabbit Hole. We covered various subjects. So what we're going to do is we're going to review that podcast. Well, we've been reviewing the podcast. So we're going to try and pick out one subject at a time or one series of connected subjects at a time and try and talk about them a bit more in depth rather than just steam through and talk about lots of different things. But we will be covering various different aspects of this subject. And the subject we'll talk about today is human origins and human civilization. So my understanding of human civilization is that they call it the Fertile Crescent, which is in Iraq, modern-day Iraq, which is in a place called Mesopotamia, I think, if I pronounce that correctly. That's where civilization is understood to have spawned from. Obviously, people believe from the evolutionary model that men have evolved from apes and that life began in Africa and men evolved in Africa. But civilization, as we understand it, with mathematics, writing, laws, and buildings and townships and cities, evolved in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. There's various different cultures that evolved side by side in early days. I think they had the first understood or modern day scientific understanding was the walls of Jericho, was a civilization or a settlement called Jericho. There were smaller civilizations or civilizations that spawned from Jericho. But the first one of interest to me was the Sumerian culture, which is understood to have evolved 6,500 years ago. And Sumerian culture was a culture that came before the Sumerians. We'll come back to the Sumerians in a bit. But I'm going to put a little timeline up on the images for you to have a quick look, courtesy of the book called Ancient Civilizations of the Near East and Mediterranean by John Haywood. So I'm going to put that image up. And I will also put an image up of a clay figurine. Now, the reason I'm putting this image up is personally, I used to believe in the ancient aliens theory. That I used to believe that humans didn't get their intelligence or their civilization or whatever you want to call it out of nowhere. Some may say that's a very deluded perception to have. That's one I used to have as a youngster. One that I sort of like am darting in between accepting and not accepting as I grow older, and the more I learn, but the more I learn, the less I know. But the interesting thing about the Sumerian culture is that they made these clay figurines, and I'm going to hopefully have one on the screen right now so you can see. And what I found fascinating is that this is a standard educational book. It's not a conspiratorial or exopolitics book or quasi-science book or whatever. And it clearly, to me, shows a human head with a small nose, a small slanted chin, and large almond eyes. And anyone who studied ufology or looked into ufology and even look at popular culture will understand that's very similar to a grey entity, a grey alien. So anyway, coming over to Soul now, just wondering what his thoughts on that are.
Yeah, so the Sumerian culture, it's about 7,000 years ago, right? So that's even
7 to 8,000 years old.
Yeah, so that's even before the ancient Egyptians.
Yep.
Were supposed to be Roman Egypt and building pyramids and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Sumerians, not to be confused with the Sumerians.
No,
right?
we must make sure we don't confuse the Sumerians and the Sumerians. The Sumerians came before the Sumerians.
Yeah, because the Sumerians, according to the mainstream thinking, the Sumerians is one of the most earliest civilized
societies, cultures. They had cities,
and they basically invented maths and agriculture and irrigation and complex social hierarchies and stuff like that. But
writing.
We know that. Sorry?
They apparently were one of the first civilizations to have writing in cuneiform text, where they took clay tablets and used reeds to make indentations in the clay tablets. And that was one of the first forms of writing, and also in par with the mathematics. And apparently it was first devised to catalogue stores of grain, but then it evolved further and further where they actually developed a language where they could communicate who owned what land or who owned what this, and like deeds and stuff like that.
Yeah. So they are thought to be the bringers of modern society, and that's also in Mesopotamia around 4000 BC, so about 6000 years ago, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But we know that that's not really true, because in that same geographical area you have the Sumerians, which is 2000 years earlier, and they also had irrigation and complex social structures, and they used metals, and they they had a lot of knowledge as well. So that's really interesting.
I mean, I don't understand it all too well, but it'd be interesting to see if the Sumerian culture evolved itself or split to form other cultures, and if one of those was the Sumerian culture, and if their knowledge migrated from the Sumerian culture to the Sumerian culture and advanced, as all knowledge does in society and civilization, which is something I call the migrations of civilizations. I'm not sure what the official term is, but migrations of civilizations with their culture and their knowledge. But a lot of people have speculated that the bringers of culture and knowledge to humanity, and they claim it was brought to the Sumerian culture, was by the Anunnaki, who are a bunch of beings, large beings, extraterrestrial, biological, physical beings that came from the stars and gave us knowledge and gave us laws and taught us how to live. Now, I will say straight away that from what I understand, there's other people who say in books like the Nag Hammadi and the Apocrypha, which I think are biblical books, which obviously came much later in society and civilization, but they reinforce this belief or narrative of sky beings coming and creating us in things like the Nephilim and the I can't remember what they're called, but basically believe, I think it's the Nephilim and other such beings which came and created us. But coming back to the Anunnaki, the first person I understand who created that belief system was a guy called Zecharia Sitchin. And Zecharia Sitchin wrote a whole series of books about these Anunnaki coming down and giving us culture and society and stuff like that. And the trouble is with Zecharia Sitchin is that it spawned a lot of thinkers to think along similar lines, and a lot of researchers to think along similar lines. And it spread mimetically. And what I mean by that is the same way as simple meme spreads around the internet, it like grows and evolves and changes over time and stuff like that. People adapt it to mean different things. And the meme of the Anunnaki spread through different belief systems and cultures the same way a meme did, and spawned a whole bunch of extraterrestrial hypotheses and stuff like that and speculation. But the trouble is with Zecharia Sitchin is that when he was approached by academics cryptographers who decode ancient languages, and they work together, they use various techniques and means to decode these languages, they could not decode what Zecharia Sitchin decoded. Now, you could say, oh, Zecharia Sitchin was like a protege, you know what I mean? He was like a savant of decoding stuff. But when you're decoding languages, the only way to do that is to compare it to other languages and to compare it to other cultures, like databases, as it were. You can't just pluck things out the air, really, and decode these things. Like, the only reason we can decode a lot of Egyptian today is because we've got a thing called the Rosetta Stone, which I don't know if you're familiar with, Sol, but from what I understand, it's a large stone with one part's got Greek on it, one part's got, is it Egyptian, and I'm not sure what the third part is. It Roman?
No, I think it's no, I think it's something else.
But it's definitely got Greek and Egyptian, hasn't it? And
because first they were confused because they only could decipher the Greek and then not the two other languages, but then they understood that basically it's the same text written 3 times but in 3 different languages. So because of that, because they understood one language, meaning the Greek, they could decipher the other languages.
Yeah. So my point being is that we need to have some forms of decoding languages. We can't just make stuff up. But Zecharia Sitchin was approached and he was offered money and if he could prove or show how he decoded these languages to other academics, which they'd be interested in, obviously for academic reasons, then please do so. And he refused on every account. When he was challenged at his talks on how he decoded it, people were sort of escorted out or ignored. So it's very dubious how Zechariah Sitchin decoded these translations. But again, back onto the defense of the ancient astronaut theory, I just find it so startling and interesting that a lot of the ancient artwork from across the world, and I'll try and put some more pictures in the comments, but you look at cave paintings, Aboriginal art from different places all around the world, and they show depictions of these entities of either like halos or large eyes and large heads and small bodies. And I find that really interesting. I'm going to try and use some images from a book called Alien Art by Sarah Moran, which has actually got a foreword by Eric von Daniken. And as we're speaking, I'm going to be putting some of those images up in the video for you to look at. But yeah, you can't just say, just because we don't understand something, God made it. You know, a lot of people say because we can't understand certain things, it means God done it. The same way you can't say because we can't understand a lot of things, aliens done it. You know, just because we don't understand stuff yet, we haven't devised the technologies or the processes of understanding things, we can't just jump to conclusions. But I find it really, really interesting. But like I said, I repeat myself again, and the image will be in the video, that the Sumerian culture, the precursors to our all civilization as we understand it, had this alien-looking being. Now, you could argue that it's just a representation of a human, but again, I'll put a picture up of a modern grey from popular culture and UFO accounts, and I'll put a picture of a Sumerian clay figurine and leave you to come to your own conclusions. Now, like I said, the Bible has massive power over much of the world today and people's thinking and people's thought processes, and they have their creation myths. People do argue that the Bible is very metaphorical. There's people who take it at face value and literally, and then there's those who take it on a metaphorical level, meaning that it's got deeper myths encoded in it and hidden in it. There's also other books like the Gnostic Bible, the Nag Hammadi, and I think it's called the Apocrypha, which are books that have been left out of the Bible, which explain our origins and stuff like that, which again point towards a interference with non-human entities, so we class them as aliens, angels, multidimensional beings, whatever you want to call them, and humanity. Now, whether that's true or not, I can now not really say, but those belief systems do hold a lot of power in people's psyches and consciousness around the world today in various forms. Yeah, have you heard of any of that stuff before, Sol?
Yeah, well, there's obviously, if you're talking about religion, then there's many religions, and one thing at least, I don't want to go too much into religions per se, because
They are a byproduct of culture, aren't they? Really, they're a byproduct of culture and society,
but
rather than.
I think well, again, maybe that's a topic for another conversation. But one thing they all have in common is they all talk about one cataclysmic event, like a flood or something.
And many cultures, many ancient cultures have this story as well, even without their religions as such. There's a lot of ancient flood myths in different cultures. But yeah, carry on if you don't mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all those things, all these cultures, not only like the religions we know now, but older civilizations. Like, talk about the fact that the Anunnaki with the Sumerians, and they came to the Sumerians and they gave them knowledge and medicine and wealth, and they made them sophisticated, but that's 4,000 BC, so that's like 6,000 years ago. But we know that on a timeline that's already not correct, because before the Sumerians you had the Sumerians, right? You have Göbekli Tepe, you have the Mayans, you have you have many of these places.
Were the Mayans before? The Mayans weren't before the Sumerians, were they?
No, no, but it's in a completely different, like, because you can say the Sumerians, and you know, all these civilizations, they kind of come from Mesopotamia, right?
Believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, from that same area. So
Mm,
I think it's interesting to think about how there's um, these same narratives on the other side of the planet,
mm.
right? And you know, they all have one thing in common, and that's
They have
something.
more than one thing in common. I mean, they've got the myths of man being created by supernatural entities. That's one thing they got in common. Whether those entities are gods or aliens or what, they've got their creation myths. They've also got their cataclysm myths of warning of a great time when humans were destroyed by a great cataclysm. So they've got their destruction and myths, cataclysm myths. They've also got that a lot of these societies from around the world, even though they're separated by thousands of miles and hundreds, if not thousands of years, all built pyramids. And they may not have built pyramids in the same way as which the Egyptians built pyramids at a later date with the great sort of angular straight pyramids. You know, they built ziggurats, as they're called, step pyramids. Like the
Yeah,
Mayans, the Aztecs, even the early
I,
Egyptians all created step pyramids, which is like a base of
I
squares on a base of squares on a
yeah,
base of squares.
I know, you know, I know that's true, and it's quite peculiar, but you know, I don't know, somewhere the voice of reason says, you know, if you're, you know, an older civilization, obviously you don't have the technology that we do with, you know, mechanics and whatever, and using levers to build skyscrapers and whatnot, and you
Mm.
know, hydraulic engineering. So if you wanna kind of build something like a big structure, it's kind of gonna have to go into a pyramid shape.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I feel like just because there's a correlation doesn't mean that there's a causality.
Yeah,
But
I agree. Well, I agree. That's the one possible, one very rational possibility, of course.
yeah, um, but one thing that is intriguing is that all these landmarks, the temples, the pyramids, all
Mm.
these magnificent structures, they're always linked to astronomical features, to
Yeah.
constellations, to stars, to, you know, the equinoxes, these
Mm.
kind of stuff.
Mm. Now, yeah, on the one hand, that's fascinating, but on then, like you were saying, the rational hand, correlation doesn't lead to causation, is that if you were to live thousands of years ago out in the wild, you know, out in the small civilizations or cities, whatever, without any light pollution, the space and the stars would have been beautiful. You would have seen a Milky Way. You'd see so much of it, you know,
Mm,
what we don't see in cities because of light pollution. And witnessing that and witnessing the movement of stars and the way they spin and, you know, move around, you know, half of your time alive is in the dark, you know?
yeah,
You're
true, true.
looking up at the heavens and you're
You don't
seeing
have
this.
social media, you don't, you know,
So they're going to be fascinated one way or
yeah,
another. We're all naturally drawn to the stars. So I don't know about you. When I was younger, I used to go camp and just lie and look at them, what I could see. But when
yeah,
you're a
it's
civilization forming your creation myths, and you're a civilization trying to understand yourself in reality, you know, and physical reality, the heavens and the stars would have been a very fascinating object to look at. So one could argue that the reason that these things were aligned to stars and built to like align with the Milky Way and stuff like that, and I'm just putting something out there, is just for the simple fact of they were a fascinating thing, and by measuring the movements of the stars and measuring the precession of the stars, almost gave them, and the moon itself as well as the sun's rotation as well, gave them sort of a calendar, so when to know how to plant their crops, so when to harvest and stuff like that, as well as just a simple way of measuring time. Now,
mm,
that's the rational point of view. The different point of view, I don't want to call it a rational because I don't think it is a rational, but a different point of view is coming to a book, which I'm going to put in the comments, called Heaven's Mirror by Graham Hancock. Now, I'll mention the bad points of that book, or the points which I saw got dismissed by some academics and people, and not to say that we've got to trust all academics, of course, but is that Graham Hancock presented that these monuments all around the world, from the pyramids of Egypt to temples in the Mayan temples and stuff like that, temples all around the world, South America, Central America, we're all, and Cambodia, like Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom, were all built to correlate with the stars, but not just to correlate and built with the stars. Like he was saying that the pyramids are built to face the stars a certain way. Certain stars, I think, Orion's belt, temples in Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom. I'm not talking about one single temple. We're talking about a series of temples scattered across, miles across the plains. Were all built to show the time of precession to the year 10,500 BC, I believe it was. But we'll come back to that after the break. Catch you in a bit.
And now it's digital. And now it's digital. And now it's digital. And these waves have been moving us through the 20th century. And the 21st century is all going to be digital.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back. I'm here with Soul, and this is Zen. And we left the last part of the show on talking about a book called Heaven's Mirror, The Quest for the Lost Civilization by Graham Hancock and Santha Fia, I think, or Fire. Can't pronounce that properly. But I'll put an image in the video so you can have a look. And so Graham was speaking about the Great Pyramids and other such monuments around the earth, including Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom in Cambodia, were all built to correlate with the stars. But they weren't built to correlate with the stars only. They're built to correlate to the stars pointing to a certain epoch in time of 10,500 BC, I believe. Now, the stars didn't line up to these buildings currently today. That's because of a thing called precession, where the Earth spins or tilts 1 degree on its axis every 72 years, I believe. So if you were to calculate the stars of how they viewed in 10,500 BC, that's when these monuments, although built at different periods of time throughout history, they all lined up to the stars apparently in 10,500 BC. So what do you think about that, Sol? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, I think you said Hancock was an academic.
No, I didn't. I said he was proven wrong by some academics on some of his speculations on the temples of Angkor Wat. That's what I wanted to say. Because what they done is that they took there's so many temples in Cambodia that you could essentially, they were saying, line them up to any star system,
right,
any date if you wanted to. And they've shown that by showing temples which were used by Graham and other temples what weren't used by Graham. They were saying he's very selective on the temples he wants, almost like he was using the temples to align with his theory rather than anything else.
But I think also in Malta there's a set of excavations that they've done, and they found a set of temples, and they all ever so slightly are built, and they look out to a different angle, and that's how you explained that over time these things change because the Earth doesn't stay in the same position when you look out in the stars. So now we can retrospectively look at these things and calculate, oh, in that time, so they must have been this.
Yeah, precession it's called.
Yeah. So I think Graham Hancock, his theory is that all over the planet we have the civilizations and
ancient civilizations.
Ancient civilizations, exactly, and they all have a lot of things in common, especially when you talk about the stars, and they go through tremendous efforts to build these temples and
efforts.
Yeah, and I think the oldest one that we know of is Göbekli Tepe, which was built 9,000 BC. Yeah, imagine that, 9,000, right? So that's 11,000 years ago. That's crazy.
Before Samaria and the Samarans even.
Yeah, so we thought that, mainstream thinking, we think people at that time are only just
Yeah.
hunter-gatherers, right?
Yeah.
There's no complex societies, no. But we now know that that's not true. The interesting thing about Göbekli Tepe is that it was built and it's been keep building on for 2,000 years. So for 2,000 years, it's been
So you're
civilization.
saying it was built and it was constantly built on and updated over a period of 2,000 years. So we're talking
Yeah,
about a civilization which didn't disappear and reappear after a few hundred years. It's at least definitely 2,000 years of some form of civilization around Göbekli Tepe.
exactly. Yeah, and that's somewhere in the west of Turkey. Just so also again, um, in that area of Mesopotamia,
That's
right?
fascinating.
But what's even more fascinating, or at least intriguing, is that that whole site, right, that they've been building for 2,000 years.
Mm.
Um, the only way that we now found it, and it's in really good state, is that they've went through tremendous effort to bury it. And yeah, so basically they build it for 2,000
Mm.
years straight, and then for some reason they put a hill on top of it.
Okay, that's very interesting. So it wasn't like it got buried through erosion from landslides or
No,
anything like that.
no.
It's
So from what they can tell is that there's been deliberate action to like
conceal it, protect it, hide it.
conceal it, protect it. Yeah, I think Graham Hancock says he believes it's more like of a time capsule, so it
Oh yeah, yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
get
What we do
destroyed.
today.
But anyway, what something interesting that they all have in common, and again, that's from his reasoning, is that all these places. So we talk about Göbekli Tepe. So that's the oldest site that we know of. We got Cambodia. We got the Mayans. We got all these places, Serpent Mouth.
Can you explain what a serpent mound is for people who don't know?
So Serpent Mound, it's a bit controversial because it's in the United States, and for mainstream thinking is that there wasn't any civilization in the United States, on North America, continent of North America, for a very long time. And Serpent Mound is basically a hill, as you can call it, if you can call it that. It's a hill made very deliberately. And again, it's huge, and it's also some sort of constellation type of site where they watch the stars, and you can see the spring equinox and very accurately, and given you look at it in its context when the Earth was rotating that way, right?
Okay,
The controversial thing about it is that the excavations they've done says that it's only 2,000 years old,
right.
or 2000, or don't quote me on this, but pretty recent if you compare
Yeah,
it to Göbekli Tepe, for example, which is 7,000 years old.
yeah,
Um, but Graham thinks that that place was a very well-known place, and that many peoples over the ages came there to live and to find better lives, and it was very well known. That's why you find very recent archaeological
yeah,
items.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
he thinks if you dig deeper, you'll find
More
proof that
relics of older civilizations or
exactly,
societies.
exactly. Because when you put the context the same way they did it with other temples, when you put it in context, when it points to the equinox, and that's a common theme among all these civilizations, because for logical reasons, the spring equinox, it
Time of
signifies,
harvest.
yeah, it signifies, the days are getting longer, it's getting warmer, whatever, right? So it's
Yeah,
good. But if you put it in its astronomical context, it says, you can say that it's a lot older than what,
Interesting.
They claim it to be.
Okay.
But anyway, it's an interesting subject, and it's absolutely stunning. So definitely look up on it.
Yeah, we'll try and get some images. We hopefully, as you're listening to this, we'll have some images of some of these serpent mounds, which Soul's talking about. So you mentioned things they got in common, and now I want to come back to, because where I said that Graham Hancock was discredited or his theory proven wrong, I want to also show where he's got some really interesting, amazing points as well about the commonalities, which I'm aware of in some of these civilizations, beyond the ones I've mentioned. And I'm going to put some images up in the video, and you're going to see blocks which are used to build temples, pyramids, walls, structures in different civilizations across the world. Cutting a long story short, these civilizations would all use blocks clearly for their buildings, pyramids and so on. But what you'll see is that to hold these blocks together, to hold some of these blocks together, they had metal clamps. So you'd have a large block, and in that large block, they'd cut like a T shape at the edge of it. And at the other edge of the joining block, they'd cut another T shape. And they'd use basically metal clamps. They'd pour molten metal into these cuts to create like bolts, as it were, holding the blocks together. Now you've got these in Tiahuanaco, I can't even say it properly, but South America, Egypt, and Cambodia. All these civilizations use this same clamping mechanism, this clamping technique. And if I remember correctly, in Graham's book, he was saying that although they use alloys of different metals together, to strengthen these clamps and to use these clamps. But apparently, from what I understand, even though these cultures are separated by hundreds of years, thousands of years, and thousands of miles, they all used a similar alloy, as if they're using the same recipe. And on top of that, to get these metals to use in these clamps, they'd have to travel to certain distances from their where they were building them to gather these resources. And that was fascinating. I found that really fascinating. It's in the book Heaven's Mirror by Graham Hancock. But that also brings me to think of Stonehenge, because Stonehenge is another extremely famous ancient monument, which people debate much over. But I think one thing what's even accepted by current thinking is that the stone which was built Stonehenge, although there would be stone more available, I think, in the surrounding area at the time, the stone came from a very long distance away. It's believed to, I think, come from parts of Wales or something. So they would have had to have traveled these massive stones, huge, heavy stones, a great distance. We're meant to believe these people were, quote unquote, primitive or basic or early man or whatever, but they would have gone to great trouble to move these stones to that point in that place. And this is the common theme we're finding with Egypt and these other civilizations, is that, especially in Egypt, they would go to a great lengths to somehow carve these huge obelisks out of granite, which we're told they had nothing more than other stones to do it with and copper tools. But granite is extremely strong. And the weight of these obelisks would have been monumental. There's even, I'll try and get a photo, but for the video, but there's even images of these obelisks sort of cracked when they're like cutting them out of the ground.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely massive. There's no way they could have moved them. I don't care what anyone says. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So obviously, whatever happens back then around the globe, it's a global phenomenon. It's people went out of their ways, tremendous efforts to make a statement, right?
Yeah.
And that's again where Graham Hancock believes that in all these sites you have depictions of animals, right, carved into the stones or whatever, and especially the snake is a very reoccurring theme in all the civilizations, right? Very, very important. So what he believes is that at some point civilization has been wiped out, right?
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with this.
And there we come again with the religious text about the great floods and everything. So something really, really bad happened, cataclysmic event. And he believes that at some point in time there was a very advanced civilization, got wiped out, and it tried to the survivors of those civilizations basically spread out and tried to, build these astronomical sites to tell us that watch out, we've been wiped out by something from space, from stars,
Okay.
a meteor. So he thinks these serpents, that's very relevant, reoccurring theme, symbolize a meteor, right? Meteor coming down to Earth, changing everything. Everything got wiped out. Some survive, and the survivors basically try to reboot civilization, but they also, they say, look at the stars. We were once strong, advanced, but we got wiped out. This might happen again. So it's more like a warning.
Okay, that's fascinating. Now, I have read that theory. I am familiar with that theory. I think he's presented it even further in some of his later books. And it does sound very plausible, but it brings in then to speculation or my thought process, I'm sure with many other people, where did these people come from in the first place? So we've got
And that's
and
something I find. Sorry.
no, carry on.
Yeah, that's something
These people who brought the knowledge to us, where did they come from? And it brings into speculation, were they, not space aliens, but a greater civilization would have got here somehow, one way or another. And it brings into speculation of Atlantis and another continent I want to come to later called Mu. I don't know if Graham Hancock speaks of Mu, but there's other theories of another continent called Mu.
Yeah. So I think there's compelling evidence, if you want to call it that Atlantis was that civilization.
Okay.
And I also think there's somebody that does good work on YouTube. His channel is Bright Insight.
Can you say that again and spell it out possibly? We can put spell it out and then we'll put a
Bright Insight, right? Jimmy Corsetti is his name. And he does a lot of work on Atlantis, and he puts really, really compelling videos together. Obviously he's not a scientist, but he does a really good job. And I think everybody with, some common sense can see that these things are plausible, right? And that's basically the reshot structure in the Sahara. It's called the Eye of the Sahara. Have you heard of it?
Oh, is that a big circular?
Yeah, in the Sahara.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of it. Well, carry on, please.
So that's something plausible. Why? Because obviously, if you're talking about the Younger Dryas, that's about 12,000 years ago.
Okay,
Younger
which
Dryas
lines up to the 10,500 BC epoch that Graham's been warning about in his other books.
Yes.
Because we're in what year 2000, so to speak.
Yeah, and that also makes sense that the earliest civilization that we can find is Göbekli Tepe, which is 11,000 years ago, right? Which isn't that far away. Sure, yeah, it's far away. It's a distance far away if you have to walk across the Sahara Desert, but relatively to other places, it's not that far away, right? Also, if you take into account that our planet goes through these cycles, where the climate changes, so it's believed that before the Great Flood, it was believed that the Sahara Desert was once very like a jungle, like a jungle. So the opposite of a desert, right?
And that's people have said the same about Egypt, with the saying that the Sphinx is a lot older, and the Sphinx doesn't have just wind erosion and sand erosion, but water erosion.
Yeah. Something, and it all makes sense, right? Because I think also they found a tablet like in South Sudan or something, like a tablet, like a stone tablet, and that was like a map, and that showed the river and the 3 pyramids, and they carbon dated that tablet 9,000 years old. So
Wow.
9,000 BC. So and they say that the pyramids were only built like 4,000 BC. So it just doesn't make sense, right? So
Yeah.
if that tablet depicts those pyramids, the pyramids must be a lot older, right? And it makes sense that if you have a Atlantis, which is supposed to be a very sophisticated civilization where all people around the world go and very well faring, that if that would get wiped out, where do you go? You can't go west because that's the ocean. You go east, that's Egypt. More east from there, Mesopotamia.
Mm.
Right. So if you have
Okay.
all that knowledge and you are a survivor,
Mm.
you do what you can do.
Mm.
So I think that's something interesting. Although Hancock doesn't agree with that the Richat structure being a possible place for Atlantis.
Okay. Very
Um,
interesting though.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
Atlantis, so obviously very people are familiar with the story of Atlantis or the continent of Atlantis. It's leaked into popular culture quite a bit. But I think people understand it and dismiss it because they're saying it's the writings. Was it of Plato? Was it
yeah.
Plato?
So Plato, we know about Atlantis because Plato he describes Atlantis as a mythical island in one of his dialogues, right?
Mm,
Um, According to him, it was a powerful and advanced civilization that was
mm,
destroyed in one single day of catastrophic earthquakes and floods. And he said it has existed 9,000 years before his time, which is about 12,000 years ago, which
okay,
is exactly the periods of the Younger Dryas, which is 12,000 years ago.
okay.
So people
And he couldn't have
discredit
known that.
Plato. Yeah, no, he couldn't have, like they discredit Plato and the fact that he talks about Atlantis because they say it's fiction or is based on some other island or whatever that was flooded, a few
Yeah,
hundred years before him, and it's basically, you know, uh,
yeah.
his imagination that he's writing about. But I don't know, like it's pretty spot on. If he says about one very advanced civilization, you know, got destroyed in one day, one night, at the same, you know, obviously not the same because we're talking about plus minus 500 years here, but still,
Yeah,
our guess is as good. That's the same as Younger Dryas. So I think, you know,
fascinating. And yeah, coming back to the similarities of the civilizations had, they've all got their cultures, their religions, their myths, and religions and stuff. Because religion is a part of culture. It evolves from the culture. Culture evolves from the society. Society evolves from the migrations of people coming together and sharing ideas. And one book I want to mention, where is it? Is this book? I'm going to put in the video for people to look at. It's called The Super Gods by Maurice Cotterell. It's a really interesting book, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it does mention Atlantis, but it also mentions another um, continent called Mu, and it presents pretty much the same uh, theories as Graham Hancock presents, or similar theories of Graham Hancock presents and others present, of a great cataclysm befalling Earth, and the survivors of that spreading civilization across the world to South America, Egypt, and so on. Not only have in this gentleman Maurice Cotterell's eyes the knowledge been encoded in the actual buildings of the pyramids and to look at the stars, but actually in the structures of great pictures or stone reliefs, murals, so to speak. In particular, what I'm going to speak about is the stone mural of a gentleman called Lord Pacal. Now, Lord Pacal was like a spiritual leader, teacher of the Mayan people. When he was buried, he had a huge stone sarcophagus and a very large stone lid on that sarcophagus. which has got a very, very intricate. I'm going to put a picture in the comments, in the video for everyone, of a man sat in an object looking up at it. And it very much does look like he's either looking through a telescope of sorts, but then if you look at it another way, it looks like he's in a space rocket of some sorts. And this is Lord Pacal. And this gentleman is basically, through using computers, believes he's decoded a message. And we spoke about on a previous podcast of noise. You can look for anything within anything when you're looking for things to fit your narrative. But this gentleman believes that the stone sarcophagus lid is a series of images showing when you take a transparent of it and you fold it over on its side and line up to certain angles, it creates imagery of the myths of, or the belief systems and stories of the Mayan people, their births and stuff like that. Now, one thing I found really fascinating is that it mentions, and a friend, it's funny because a friend just texted me about this on something. I wasn't going to mention it, but the number 1,144,000, I think it is. Now, I think it's the Jehovah's Witnesses literally believe that at the time of reckoning and when judgment's going to come upon man, that 1,444,000, I think it is, survivors are going to be, like, true believers are going to get taken away, right? And I'm like, okay, well, me and my friend are having a talk about this at the moment. He's really funny. It's quite a funny conversation, really. But yeah, they believe that literally. But on this Lord Pacal, and I'll try and use the image, and I'll put the image in the video for people to look at. But when you take this tombstone image, this sarcophagus lid image, and you look at it, it's got the Roman numerals of 144, it looks like, in the image. And then it has the zero of the Mayan zero. Okay, so it looks like it's saying on Lord Pacal's head, 144000. Okay, and that's really weird. And this gentleman, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know because I'm not a scientist, but I'm just going to present his information anyway. But he says that there's the speed of light, as we call it. Okay, I'm going to keep this simple and not go off on too much of a tangent. But the speed of light, as we understand it, going from point A to point B. So say we shot a laser from Earth to Mars. That's a straight line, yeah? That's the speed of light. Now, if we fire a laser on Earth, we've got to take gravity into account of the laser going around Earth, being pulled by gravity, the light. You with me?
Yeah.
Now, if you take that line, if you were to take a ruler, as I'm holding up now, you can't bend a ruler around a circle. Just what I'm saying, because you'd have to cut out segments of the underside of the ruler in triangles to bend it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
All right.
Okay. So when you've got the light going round, say, Earth, the laser going from point A and conoiding back on itself to the measuring device, okay?
Sure.
That is bending. Light is bending, okay?
Right.
Now, the speed of light on Earth, you'd have the outer line of the laser, the upper line of the laser going towards space direction, and the inner line of the laser going towards Earth's direction. They're going to be different lengths. They're going to be different lengths. And that's called the speed of light per arc minute. And apparently, from what I remember, the speed of light per arc minute is 144,000. Now, I'm going to just quickly touch upon this and come back to something else you want to speak about, because I've got to mention it because my friends just text me, so I think it's a bit of a synchronicity. But the speed of light on Earth is 144,000 according to this book. Please get the book and check it out yourself and read it yourself. Now, that's another interesting correlation then between all these cultures, religions, is that all their depictions, you look at Buddha, from India, in Pakistan area, you look at Krishna, you look at all the religious Jesus, all the religious saints and that, they've all got light around their head, halos around their head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just throwing it out there, that makes me think, is there a mystical, spiritual element to some of these things that Graham Hancock's talking about? Like, some people talk about the Anunnaki and religions and consciousness and stuff like that. I'm not going to go off on another tangent to try to stick to Earth origins, but that is a similarity that all cultures have got, is this light phenomena, this phenomena of light around people's heads.
Okay. Meaning?
Now, sorry? Have you not seen that?
Meaning?
I don't know. Just find it interesting.
Okay.
I have no clue, my friend. I could speculate till the cows come home, but I'm not doing that because that's not what we're talking about. But I just find it fascinating that, you've got Lord Pacal with the number 144000 on his head, who's in South America. So he's got a light per arc per minute on his head. Then you've got depictions of all these different cultures of saints throughout history from different religions who shouldn't be connected in face, and they've all got light around their head. Just find it fascinating. I'll put some images in the video. I'll try and find a page with 1440 of Lord Pacal on his head. And like, again, I'll ask you to check this stuff out for yourselves and build your own perceptions. But I just find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
It's just another similarity these cultures and civilizations have got.
Yeah.
And back to Atlantis, actually, because we were on the subject of Atlantis, there's a belief system, a tradition called the Toltec tradition.
Sorry, the what?
Toltec tradition. Now, there was a South American race called the Toltecs, or sorry, culture called the Toltecs. But the Toltec tradition apparently doesn't go back to the Toltec physical civilization. It's a tradition, apparently, what comes back from Atlantis yet again. And they themselves talk about Atlantis being destroyed and survivors having to spread across the world with this Toltec wisdom and knowledge. But they do talk about the battle of light and dark, and it's actually mankind falling away from light and mankind falling into darkness, what caused something to happen, what caused Atlantis to sink. And I'll present some books. The Toltec tradition is presented by a gentleman called Thune Mars. I'll put some images of the books in the videos for people to look at. It's a sort of shamanistic, spiritual warrior type way of living, very acute mindfulness, very metaphorical belief systems as well. But it's very fascinating. But again, it's that connection to Atlantis and this light situation, which I've just mentioned. But yeah, Graham Hancock and Atlantis. I mean, we've gone full circle now, haven't we? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a full circle, something kind of the off topic, but it's on topic, but there's, that's just a pure, play of my imagination. But because you say full circle, right? And talking about the speed of light and meaning kind of space travel and stuff like that.
Okay.
Like going full circle, wouldn't it be funny if now they found on Mars, right? They found
the pyramids.
Evidence. No, they found evidence that there's carbon-based life and whatnot. There was once carbon-based life on Mars, and once they found one-cell organisms, and they said there was once life on Mars and whatnot, and this and that. Right? This is just something I've been playing with in my mind. Which
I'll tell you what, can we come back to it after the break? Because I want to really hear this, but I think it's going to get me to ramble on as well. I don't know how much time we've got left. So let's end it here for now. Come back after a break. And now we're going to go into the world of speculation and rambling again. Okay, now we've put some information out there. We're going to probably spend another half an hour rambling. So we'll be right back, everyone.
And now it's digital. And now it's digital.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to a Schizo's Guide to the Galaxy podcast, part 3 of Human Origins and Civilization. Welcome to Soul again, and welcome back.
Yes, thank you. So,
and I'm Zen. And I'm Zen. Moving on, carry on.
You are Zen. So what I find interesting is that in my life, there's something I've noticed, in that there's so much irony in life, in the universe, like not in a bad sense, but sometimes it's funny when you see it happen, right? So to continue on what I was saying earlier, right? It's just based on nothing, right? It's just
this is another ramble down a rabbit hole session.
Yeah, fantasy, like a little mental exercise, I guess. But the fact that they found evidence that there was carbon-based life and one-cell organisms, and that once upon a time in a distant galaxy far, far away, right, there was water on Mars, right?
Mm.
But obviously now there isn't. So something happened, right? Something happened. It's not livable anymore. What if we as a species used to live on Mars?
It's something I've contemplated. It makes a lot of sense when, in some ways. Because all I'm going to say is that although Richard Hoagland's work's been discredited, there are pyramids on Mars, or structures what look like pyramids on Mars in an area called Cydonia, but I'm not going to go there. But also, people say humans just don't make sense that we evolved on Earth because of all the complications like our back troubles and stuff like that. Like we're not built for the gravity of Earth or the way we live. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I've heard people mention it. But carry on, please.
Thank you for that intermezzo. But wouldn't it be funny if we were living on Mars, and then we see, okay, Mars is not a valid option anymore. We need to colonize another planet. We see Earth. Let's go to Earth.
Yeah.
And now we're in this predicament. But we say, well,
We're repeating
ship might
history.
hit the fan again. We might need to go and do another planet. We might need to go to Mars.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
irony.
It is ironic. We won't be going back home, ironically. To a home we destroyed once before, or a home what was destroyed once before.
Yeah, we just forgot, and that's I think ties into where did we come from, ancient civilizations, because obviously you get this evidence that before us, our civilizations as we know it, there was other stuff going on, and then there's stuff happening, and we forget. As a species, we forget. And that's the thing, right? We're a species with amnesia. So how far does it go? How far exactly does it go?
Fascinating. And coming back to have you finished? I don't want to interrupt you if you've got anything more to say.
Go ahead.
Coming back to something I forgot to mention earlier is coming back to the pyramids, temples, monuments, structures all around Earth. Is there some people believe, and a lot of people do believe, but these buildings are not just lined up to the stars, but coming back to the 144 speed of light per arc minute and energy again. These monuments are linked to energy forms on the planet. Now, different cultures call them different things. The Chinese call them dragon lines. The people of Europe call them ley lines. And there's a guy called Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who's going to put the book in the comments of people, in the video for people, sorry. And it's a subject he's founded called biogeometry. And it's through using his perceptions of knowledge from ancient Egypt, so how we understand it, and using technologies he's developed, as well as ancient technologies people have used for hundreds, if not thousands of years, called dowsing. Now, people discredit dowsing, but it's been used for such a long time to locate water sources. Farmers have used it up until quite recently to know where to put their animals to pasture because of...
Is that with the two rods?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been laughed at and scoffed at, but so much of our history has been laughed at and scoffed at. But I really recommend people read the book called Back to the Future for Mankind, Biogeometry, Solutions to the Global Environmental Crisis, New Energy Secrets of Ancient Egypt and the Great Pyramids Revealed. I presents a really interesting theory on this energy system, these energies throughout the world, and how they're used throughout pyramids, temples and stuff like that. And so I believe, like we discussed earlier, there's a high possibility that these ancient stone monuments were built to try and show us something which we've forgotten. But is that also something else we've forgotten as well, that we're not just biological entities, no matter where we came from, or no matter where we...
Well, I think it's clear. It's clear that in terms of energy and vibration, there's stuff that we've just skimmed past it, and or we're missing something. There's a bigger picture, and I think that vibration and energy is a very big thing. And I legit think that we as people,
I think
when we grow up, when you're an infant and you grow up, the brain is such a powerful thing, And then, you know, obviously we have our societies, and you have to get a job and this and that, and you have to conform and you have to survive. You know, you have to
Yeah.
get money. And then obviously, you know, I think we inherently, if you look at children, they're like so smart and so curious, but they don't even realize it. And we also we tend to ignore it, but children are actually geniuses.
Yeah.
And obviously when you grow older, parts of your brain you're not using, you know, dies, and the energy, you know, the neurons
Not
get
just that, I completely see where you're going. I completely agree with you,
yeah,
but the pressures of society, the pressures of survival, and I don't just mean pressures of survival like as if we were living in the wild thousands of years ago. I'm talking about the pressures of paying bills, getting a,
yeah,
being
obviously.
attractive, fitting in with the crowd.
Yeah, it's
So
all
many extra stresses. It
it's not
draws us away
true
from our
to.
natural intuition. It draws us away from our natural levels
And
of.
I think, yeah, I think it kind of falls back on what we were talking about in that first talk we had, when, you know, in today's day and age, where we find ourselves in the society where there's, you know, corruption everywhere. It's all about
Yeah.
greed, money, and, you know, it's not true to what we find, where we find happiness. So somewhere along the line, we must have gone wrong and like missed something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you
We
mean.
kind of took a left turn where we should have taken a right. So
Very good.
yeah,
You said that. It's perfect. You said that. Perfect. We should have took a left turn when we took a left turn when we should have took a right. Because there's a gentleman called Ian McGilchrist, and he'll probably actually see if he hears being mentioned in this podcast because we spoke about really outlandish stuff. But what to him may seem outlandish stuff. But I think he's a psychiatrist, and he believes that I believe him 100%. I think he's a genius. I think he's an amazing individual. But the human brain's got two hemispheres, the left and the right. Okay, and I'm not gonna ruin his theory. Go and buy his book, The Master and His Emissary, and read it, or go and find some YouTube talks by him, or interviews, or whatever, and listen to him. Guy's a genius, and his perceptions are needed. His knowledge base is really needed at this point in our history, in our society. He's one of, in my opinion, take away all the amazing things we've been talking about. You know, the great wow out there speculative things of coming from Mars and great pyramids and energy centers. Ian McGilchrist stuff's really important. And yeah, left turn, should have took a right. We as humans, from what I understand, and I probably got this the wrong way around because that's the way I am, we're left-brained. He's saying that humans have got trapped in the left part of the hemisphere, the left hemisphere of the brain. And I
mm,
think you put it by this, right, is that you're sat on a mountain and you're looking down into a valley, and the valley's
mm,
surrounded by trees and
yeah,
birds
hmm,
and beautiful landscape. And
yeah,
there's a lake, a huge lake going out to other mountains, right?
hmm,
Now, a left brain person, aka where we are in society today now, being driven generally as a whole, as a mass, would think,
yeah,
wow, look at them trees. I could chop all them down and sell them for lumber.
yeah,
I could
yeah,
build houses out of them and sell them, and then harvest all the
yeah,
fruit, make a profit out of it, and store some for myself in the future.
yeah,
I wonder how much fish are in that river, because
yeah,
you know what I mean. The left is calculating; it's breaking things down to their small components for needs
yeah,
and gets. Yeah, that's left brain
yeah,
thinking. Where right brain thinking, to a degree, from what I understand, and I don't want to read his work. Don't take my word for it. Buy his book and read it. Master His Emissary. Is that if you're right brained, or if you're unison with left brain and right brain,
mm,
you're taking the whole. You'll be taken almost by a sense of, you know, everyone's had it sometimes where you catch that sunset and it just stops you in your tracks. You ever had it? You catch the sunset one day and it stops you in your tracks. You just get taken
yeah,
over by that sense of awe, that sense
yeah,
that you belong to something bigger, that sense you belong to something greater. Do you know what I mean? That just
sure,
all amazing, inspiring feeling. That would be the right brain stroke balance, left brain, right brain perception. But he's
yeah,
arguing that people are in their left brains and society's in their left brains, and that's what's driving us towards cataclysm and destruction. And we need to basically find ways of integrating both hemispheres of our brain to actually stop the destruction in which we're heading towards.
yeah. No, that's yeah, that sounds reasonable.
It's beyond reasonable. These guys really clued up, in my opinion, and he focuses
I
as well.
mean,
Sorry, carry on.
to put it anatomically, maybe in a bit of a extreme form. But I think I read this article about this person who had a stroke, who was having a stroke.
Stroke of insight. The lady, the female doctor, was it?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. It's a long time I read this. She was in her bathroom, and she basically had a brain aneurysm.
Yep.
All of a sudden, like one part of her brain shut down,
Yep.
and the rest of her brain took over. That's kind of the left brain, right brain kind of
Yep.
stuff. Although I don't really believe in that term exactly, because the brain is so complex. I don't think you can just
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
and right.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But as an analogy, it's fine, I guess. Um,
Popular culture has really, really
and
messed up the left
basically
brain, right
she
brain.
realized she was dying, or something bad really bad happened. But the fact that one part of her brain shut down, she saw the world completely different, and she saw, colors more vividly, and she was in the present moment, and she was,
She had a
you know
transcendental moment. She had a
yeah, and
spiritual awakening.
she was
Yeah.
happy, and she knew what was happening, but she was still, she accepted everything, and for her, she was like, wow, something unlocked in my brain, and that kind of
Her
resonates
name
with
is
me.
Jill Bolt Taylor, and the
Mm,
book she's wrote is called My Stroke of Insight. She's also done a very interesting TED talk, I think, by
mm,
the same title, My Stroke of Insight. Jill Taylor.
okay. Yeah, no, but yeah, I think nowadays, in the medical field, psychological field, they're doing a lot of progress in psychedelics, like working
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
psychedelics. So I think that does help, um, to shift the
Perceptions.
focus, yeah, on what is right and wrong, and where we should be heading, and what we should be focusing on. Except, and we shouldn't be focusing on money and greed and getting ahead, but we on other stuff. Uh,
Psychedelics can play a very powerful and important role if used properly, medicinally, and rationally in shifting
mhm.
certain people's perceptions. Not everybody should be doing them. Not everybody should be taking them. And
Yeah, no,
we're not condoning people go out on the street and start taking psychedelics. But in professional
no,
settings,
yeah,
with the professional settings where your health's looked after, your mental and physical well-being is looked after, they can play very important and powerful roles. And like I said in a previous podcast on Ramble Down a Rabbit Hole 2, when I was speaking to Rad, we were speaking about ayahuasca as well.
mm,
Then people go and do these ayahuasca retreats and have
mm,
amazing experiences. Now I think they've got their place. I think that they are absolutely powerful and maybe even necessary in certain ways. But
mm,
it comes back to we're doing when we take these substances is we're basically secreting DMT, dimethyltryptamine, in the brain, in large doses to have momentary moments of whatever that experience may be to a
it,
degree
it 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 depends on the, like,
on the
ayahuasca,
substance.
yeah, ayahuasca, yeah. But for example, when you're taking psilocybin, right,
Yeah,
mushroom truffles, what it does is,
it increases
it
the
basically,
connections in the brain, doesn't it?
exactly. So if you say people are left brains, and they've forgotten the connection with right brain, and you take
Yeah,
some psilocybin, these connections get reconfigured, and you're like, oh wow, what's happening here?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Very different perception shifts in your field of vision and consciousness, which is interesting. And this is another subject I think Graham Hancock touches in his book. I believe it's called Supernatural. Yeah, Graham Hancock speaks of this in a book called Supernatural, the uses of, I think, hallucinogens in ancient history and how they
Mm,
put mankind to speak to other entities and beings, which is another fascinating subject. But
mm.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, but um to kind of comment on what you were saying, we're talking about where do we come from, ancient civilizations, this and that, and I think it's very important to figure it out. But I think it's also Hancock that says, um, we shouldn't pay too much attention on where they come from, these people or ancestors or whatever, but we should pay a lot more attention to where they were heading towards. And I think
Yeah,
that has a lot of merit as well.
that has a lot of merit, but I love talking about this stuff. I've spent years reading about it and thinking about it. But I would go further on what Graham said, if that's what he said, and say, it doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter. We're here.
Yeah.
We're here right now, you know,
Yeah.
and what knowledge we do have around us directly behind our history, which can be catalogued. Because the trouble is, history, I think it was it George Orwell or somebody said, basically history can be erased and changed and modified, you know. We can't take anything for granted anymore. What's true? You see all these quotes on the internet. These people have said this stuff, and because of the
I
way
mean, history
we don't
is
know if it's
written by
true or not.
the
What
victor,
matters
right?
is that we're here. We are here, and we are heading forward because that's the only thing we can do is head forward in time and physical reality, and so to speak. And we need to have a really big reality check. We need to have a really big reality check on what it means to be an individual, what it means to be a human, what it means to be society, what it means to be a globalized planet, you know? And we need to have a massive reality check. And we don't even have to start thinking about the catastrophes of what happened on Mars or catastrophes of what happened in Atlantis. We need to look at where we're going. And I'm not talking about, let's just say climate change wasn't a problem, which I think, I'm not saying global warming, I'm saying climate change, I think is a thing we need to concern ourselves with, you know, whether it's natural cycles of the earth or if humans are speeding it up. But I'm talking about the way we're fishing the seas, the way we're polluting the seas, the way we're destroying arable land, the way we're chopping down the rainforests. All these things have to be taken into consideration massively right now. Do you know what I mean? And not just that, but then our personal relationship to ourselves and our thoughts, then to our families, then to society, and then to the population as a country as a whole. Because as soon as we start thinking individually as me, then you find someone you agree with, and it's like us. But that then creates some dichotomy of them. If we've got to really have a massive consciousness shift individually, as well as then hopefully collectively, you know, because we are heading towards a cataclysm. We really are, whether it's nuclear war, whether it's global environmental destruction, or a combination of them all. We've got to snap out of it.
Like we talked about this a bit on our last conversation as well. Like, you know, people in charge just want money and profit and then status quo and divide
They need ayahuasca.
And sorry?
They need ayahuasca.
No, I'm not saying they need ayahuasca.
I am.
I'm just saying,
I am.
wait. I don't know if that will fix it though, but maybe it will. But I'm saying, where is it heading? Like these people that do control the world, for the majority of they like to keep things how it is and just make money and retain power. But where's that? Where's this nation going? Where's the goal? There is no goal. There is no goal.
There is in the eyes of some people.
No, there is no goal. There is no goal. That's the thing. If there is no goal, you know, it's like the chaos theory, right? Chaos theory says, you know, everything happens all at once and there's no correlations, right? If that's true, and you say, oh, why don't you want to make a buck? Okay, sure. You know, because everything is chaos. There's no, you know, do this and do this. Okay, yeah, this person dies, or these people are not as well off, but you are, and you know what? That's life. That's how the world is. You know, that chaos theory. There's no goal. There's no thing. So if
You're
there is
really
no
starting to open a can of worms here, Sol, but carry on. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Carry on. Carry on.
To bring this home, if there is no goal, then the end point is just destruction, isn't it?
Full circle, mate.
Yeah. So
Full circle. But you're looking at full circle in a left brain way. I look at full circle in a right brain way. That's all I'm going to say, because we're going to have this on another conversation. This will go on for ages, and I'll be talking about sacred geometry. I'll be talking about consciousness. I'll be talking about a whole bunch of subjects, which this conversation never started on. But I'm going to say full circle. And I don't mean destruction, but I do believe there is pattern. I do believe there is order. I do believe there is symmetry, and there is order within chaos. The famous saying, ordo ab chaos on the dollar bill, which comes from a Freemasons being an order out of chaos. Now, I'm not saying the Freemasons are right, but I believe there is something far more powerful, far more intricate and far more at play than just the average actions of man and atoms colliding in chaos. Where chaos theory may be sound in some ways, I don't necessarily believe it's the way it is, and I'm going to leave it at that. Is it?
I mean,
That's
obviously,
another ramble down a rabbit hole.
you need to balance the scale. You know, there's no good without bad. You know, otherwise there's just nothingness, which is fine, I guess. But you know,
I'm zipping my mouth shut because this podcast could go on for too long. We started on human origins. We will have this conversation another time, mate. But if you've got anything else you want to add, carry on. But I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm showing restraint.
we're straight out. Let's keep talking, man. Let's keep talking.
Oh, okay. So, oh wow.
Okay,
Right.
you say
I'm
full
gonna
circle.
say, right, to everyone, we have now gone off the subject of human origins, who is listening. This conversation's probably going to go down a really crazy rabbit hole. It might even be a separate podcast, but if you want to turn this off now, feel free to do so. But this is a massive ramble, probably, mate. Basically, like with the stuff that's just presented by Ibrahim Karim, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, biogeometry, the stuff what's presented by coming back to the Egyptians, Leonardo da Vinci. He apparently studied with ancient mystery schools in Egypt about knowledge which was hidden from man. And apparently there was a Leonardo da Vinci school in Egypt just before the Nazis or someone took it over and destroyed it or something along those lines. I can't remember 100%. I would like to go away and think about this and gather some notes like I did for this podcast. But I believe sincerely that creation universe is intelligent. I think it's conscious. I think that we can tap into that in the right brain, left brain union through studying ourselves, not just through principles like meditation and activities like Qigong and Tai Chi and other such things, but also through studying some of the stuff like what Da Vinci and others studied, like sacred geometry itself. Just the simple act of drawing sacred geometry creates like a polarization in your brain of using logic and beauty left and right. You know, like I don't believe that everything's just chaos. I don't believe it. I believe there is chaos, but I believe there's order in chaos as well. And I think that humans are goodness, how can I put this simple? Wherever we came from, wherever we are, there's a spiritual component. There's an energetic frequency. There's an energetic component. I think we're linked to something, an interconnected web far beyond our senses, which are five senses. Okay. And I think that various artists have touched upon it and seen it with what limited perceptions they've got and presented it in a way in which they presented it. But there's also similarities. We'll talk about like things like the torus energy field. You know what that is?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, for anyone, I'm going to sound like a right noob to a lot of people.
Like the donut?
Yeah, the donut. That's a torus, but there's an energy field around all humans.
Okay.
There's an energy field around all everything. There are
Sure.
torus fields around everything. People believe, and I believe through personal experience and personal perceptions I've had, okay, that the torus field goes through us. Like people believe in things like chakras, energy points in the human body.
Yeah.
Now, the ancient Chinese believe in energy points in the body, and they call them dandians, tandians and meridians. Okay, the Hindus call them chakras and nadis. Okay, there's a lot of
Yeah.
similarities between them all, but they all believe in this energy throughout the human system. And the Chinese and the Vedics, the ancient Vedic systems of India, use techniques for using herbs and food and acupuncture and acupressure and yoga and all these different techniques of manipulating and strengthening the body and the spirit to tune into this energy. How are we supposed to talk seriously when you're pulling faces like that?
I'm listening to you face.
Oh goodness. But yeah, so oh crikey. I'm not going into my personal reasons why I believe in the torus because it happened just before my UFO experience, but people believe that the heart generates a magnetic field. Okay.
But that would make sense to me, at least, a lot. I mean, just like when you have electrical current running through a wire, it
Yeah.
doesn't run through a wire. It's a magnetic field that runs around the wire.
Okay.
So electricity doesn't run through a copper wire. It runs around the wire invisibly, and like a magnetic field runs
Wow.
just,
Didn't know
yeah. So that's how electricity goes from point A to B. So
that. Okay.
obviously the heart does produce electricity. We produce electricity with our neurons.
Mm.
Why wouldn't we be a conductor just like a copper wire is?
Okay. Because we're not copper wire. But anyway. But
We're a conductor doesn't mean
I
what.
was just being funny.
Yeah.
But I believe that we generate an energy field, and I believe that I'm like a right hippie, and I don't care. That the more you tune into the frequency of love, the more you tune into the frequency of light, of the force of love. And I don't mean gooey, romantic, coochie coo, I love you, love. I mean like the love that Buddha speaks of, the love that
Yeah.
Jesus speaks of, the love
No,
that
no,
Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of, the love that Martin Luther King speaks of, the universality of all life, of all beings, of all creation. And it's not just a concept. I've experienced it. I do experience it every day. I'm not a guru. I'm not a master.
no,
I try
for
to
sure.
be. I've experienced it enough myself to see it happen and the transformations it can have in people's lives.
It goes hand in hand with um some people are lucky, just lucky, but it's not true. You
But
create your
what's
own luck.
lucky?
Luck is
Why
an
is lucky?
attitude. Luck is an energy you put out,
Okay.
right? Um,
Can I just
there,
can I just stop you
there,
there?
there was. Hold on, I just want to say something real quick,
Okay.
right? There was this person in the United States. That said, the luckiest person in the world, right?
Yeah.
And he said it's, they would, you know, participate to these little tombolas and these little thingies where you could win or whatever, bingo and this and that. And this person would have just the most luck. They would always win.
I've heard of this before, but carry on,
Yeah.
please.
And this person said, it's, you know, it's not, I'm not lucky. It's an attitude. It's something you can make
I got you.
and teach.
I got
So
you.
what they done is they had children and they all taught this way of being lucky, and the children were also lucky.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So
So
that
it's just like love is energy without, so is being lucky. So is being so some people just attract drama and
yep.
just misery, right?
Manifest drama for themselves, not just through an energetic dynamic, but the internal dynamic. It's like I see a really powerful image, yeah, of a cartoon, and it's got a man on a bus, yeah, two men on a bus on a coach, and one man's looking out the window with a big smile on his face, and they're on a cliff, yeah, and he's facing the cliff. They're on a cliff, but there's a cliff all on a cliff. So the man who's looking out one window, all he can see is a wall, a rock wall. He's got no view, but he's
Yeah.
smiling. But he's smiling and he's happy. And on the other side, there's a man who is looking absolutely fraught and worried and depressed and riddled with everything sad in the world, overlooking a beautiful view of the ocean and birds flying by and a glorious sunset. So one man's got a real, what you would call, not very good view out of his window, but internally he's happy. So the view he is looking upon the world is happy. Whereas a man who's internally got a negative view and a negative reality tunnel is looking at a great, beautiful view, but it's just can't see it for nothing because he's so fraught with worry. So yeah, it's not just the energetic dynamics of manifesting a bigger reality through positive thinking or opening your heart chakras, but your very subtle psychological states as well. You ingrain yourself.
Your subtle psychological states, but I would also add your actual physical states,
Yeah.
which you change through your psychology and your
Action.
actual your action. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Something I find really interesting, I maybe heard of him, is like Wim Hof, the Iceman.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he does these things and everything, and he I mean the feats that he's done is simply remarkable, you
It
know.
is. Wim Hof is a remarkable individual.
Yeah, just so he basically what he talks about is tapping into your brain. Not
Yeah,
only your brain, but you can actually change your brain chemistry and everything, and yeah, through conscious efforts, you know. And it's
brilliant.
not, yeah, and that's the thing. You need to be conscious about what you do and what you put out.
Yeah, 100%. And what you take in as well,
Hmm.
you know,
And
what you
how you
take
take
in,
it out.
not just food and but information. You know, what TV
Hmm.
programs you listen to, watch, what music you listen to, what films you watch, what books you read. These all have
Hmm.
an impact on your psyche and I dare say energetic imprint. And there, I think
Yeah,
a
for
friend
sure.
was saying to me recently, I want to try and get him to find me the link for it. But I did see that some Japanese scientists basically have seen that the human body does emit light, a light frequency. And he was saying as well that because he used to dismiss this stuff, but some apparently some scientists have developed a understanding that humans have got their own electronical or etheric imprint, like blueprint, like a fingerprint, and that you can identify people by that as well from a distance using some form of technology. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to have to try and look into that because it sounds really interesting. It's something I believe everywhere. I do believe we are multi-dimensional, energetic, frequency beings in a human body, walking around in a biological body. I do believe that. I do believe it through personal experience. I may not have the intellect or the knowledge base to present the case rationally. I sincerely believe it's a matter of faith, but a matter of faith based on personal experience and looking at sciences and stuff like based like on the heart math,
Intuition as well.
yeah, and intuition. But the Heart Math Institute are looking into this kind of stuff. There's a gentleman who is real genius. He is a genius. His name is Robert Edward Grant. I suggest people look into him as well. Also go look into Wim Hof as well, because I think he touches upon some of this stuff to a little degree, not just about the brain chemistry and that, but also about other like elements of like the energy in the body and stuff. I could be wrong, but I
I
swear I've
mean,
seen.
Wim Hof went pretty deep into this. Like he's yeah, he's an older gentleman now, but he's a Dutch person, and he had
Didn't
some
he lose his partner to mental health problems?
yeah. So his wife committed suicide, unfortunately, and so he was devastated by that, and he kind of went into like a spiritual search for whatever, and into that search he learned Sanskrit, and
Wow,
yeah, he went into a lot of
journeys
spiritual
and stuff. Yeah,
journeys, and yeah. So what he's teaching or whatever, he's promoting it with the health benefits, which is
and
totally
superhuman feats as well, not just health benefits, but some of the things
yeah.
he
But
does is
he's promoting
remarkable.
it now, and people are because it's science, actually scientifically backed, right?
Yeah,
Because scientists, when he was doing these things, they just couldn't understand why he was doing it or how he was doing it, and that's how he started teaching people, and they could do it. So, but
fascinating,
yeah, he's got an interesting journey as well.
amazing, cool.
Yeah. So all these things, we're talking about Wim Hof, and sacred geometry and energy and attitudes of luck and love and energy, all these
Yeah,
things, the mind and the body, and obviously it's all connected, but from all these different perspectives, they all form they form a
piece of the
bigger puzzle.
puzzle. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely,
And
100%, 100%. It's a subject I'd like to talk about at great length at another time when I've got some stuff I can put in the podcast images, if you know what I mean, for people and
yeah.
point them towards source and that 'cause it's a fascinating subject, stuff I'm actually really, really interested in. It sounds like you know quite a bit about it as well, so it'd be great. I think we have a great conversation.
Hmm.
So I want to leave it there, but I definitely want to come back to the subject sooner or later because I think it's a fascinating subject and one was quite needed. And thank you very much for the conversation, so.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Right. Take care, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Wishing you all the best. I know we went off a bit of a tangent, but I hope it was an enjoyable one. And all the best. Peace out.
Take care. Bye.
And now it's digital. And now it's digital. And now it's digital. And these waves have been moving us through the 20th century. And the 21st century is all going to be digital. Marsh McLuhan said it. It's a global village linked together by electricity and light.